let's check out the PU monthly report for May 2023. We haven't done any of these in quite a while, so I apologize for those who have been following this on YouTube. But for the foreseeable future, we're going to try and do this again and just get right into it now, shall we? With more of this, just making sure everything is fine. We got Twitch chat over there to accompany us today, and it looks like Twitch chat isn't blocking the text either. It's kind of perfectly cut, and I didn't do that intentionally, so, you know, blessings, I guess. All right, okay, let's go into this then. So AI tech. So last month, AI tech continued to improve the collision avoidance system to give better results when ground vehicles pass each other or NPCs. They also added support for driving along a predefined route similar to how NPCs can move along a path. For this case, the designers can specify certain properties for the route, like the maximum permitted speed, which direction it should be driven, and if it should loop. Alright, so this is ground vehicles. We haven't really seen AI ground vehicles before, so it's kind of cool to see them working on this. You know, ground vehicles in general kind of seem to be the big question mark within the community as to what exactly are ground vehicles doing in Star Citizen, like what is their purpose, what are they going to be used for. Obviously, we do have those racetracks, and they're kind of the test bed right now for a few things. Not that I've really had much of a chance to using them because, like, you know, when you crash in them, it takes so long to reset. But if they're using those for AI and for testing those and how they work in those situations and roads, that's kind of cool. I do wonder, like, how it's going to evolve and where it's going to go when it comes down to missions and stuff, though. Alright, so work then began on a dynamic pathfinding regeneration feature to improve how NPCs find and follow alternative routes. For example, if a hazard, so a tree falling, a vehicle stopping, or a fire hazard, etc., impacts a navigation mesh triangle, the navigation volume will notify all related paths and check if new requests are submitted. So this is in the context of their whole nav mesh system. They have this thing where NPCs kind of like, they make their own navigational mesh, they scan the area around them, and then they move around dynamically. So this is just to make that better. What's interesting here is the tree falling thing, because right now trees are kind of immortal, like in most other video games. However, I think like as early as BritizzCon 2017, Brian Chambers did mention that, you know, they were working internally on destroying trees, and he actually wrote his own name in fallen trees. This was kind of like a thing he told us at the end of BritizzCon. And that was a long time ago, so maybe perhaps that's still something that's projected. They want us to be able to destroy trees, you know, get lumber, who knows. So the first stage of this was implementing an anchor structure to keep track of a location's navigation mesh in triangles, which is notified when a triangle is changed. These navigation anchors are then used to understand what parts of a triangle are modified and to check if new pathfinding is needed. Alright. So May also saw AI tech begin investigating and implementing a solution for NPCs entering and exiting ships from EVA using the external doors of an airlock system. Okay, cool. So for this, they set up ship and seat access as a usable to allow NPCs to find the closest entry point, fly to it, and trigger the right action or interaction. They also had to account for a ship's rotational velocity and allow NPCs to adjust their orientation as they approach. Now, obviously, they've been working on this new kind of EVA stuff as well, so I wonder if that is using the new EVA tech, which is a lot more robust than what we currently have, because what we have right now is robusted, man. So if NPCs are going to be able to get into ships based on the rotation or the rotational velocity of the ship they're trying to get into, it kind of, you know, at the very least for me right now, it kind of makes me look forward to seeing exactly what they have in store when it comes down to this new EVA system. So on the AI tools side, improvements continued for both the usable coordinator and Apollo subsumption. I've never heard it called Apollo subsumption before, but we'll see what exactly that means. We've missed a couple of these monthlies again. For the usable coordinator, optimizations were made to the code and logic flow. They updated the visuals and changed to a new usable data view too. For Apollo, the team implemented find references functionality with support for subsumption functions. AI Tech also completed various support tasks, including creating flow graph nodes and for all subsumption assignments to help the designers create scripted AI behaviors. More variable types for use as assignment inputs were added alongside support for the usable system, tactical point system, and Alpha 319. So just in general, just tasks that we as players don't have to necessarily worry too much about. In animation, The facial animation team continued to create assets for the PU-specific character types, this time relating to missions and gameplay. So if it's facial animation, then I imagine it's like, things like Rekko, it's things like, Ruto, all those characters we've seen before and how their faces move when they're talking to you. Obviously also things like, like the Xenothread mission givers and stuff like that too, which we can't really see on cam just yet, but maybe perhaps they're waiting on all this. All the performance capture for that has been done a while ago. I guess it's just about implementing it into the game. So arts and characters. In May, the character art team began work on 2 outfits for the Dusters gang and 1 for the Headhunters. Alongside this, character concept art prepared handoff documents for further Duster outfits. The Dusters being one of the other gangs within the Stanton system. Obviously, we know all about the Ninetales. They kind of seem to be everything apart from, when Xenothread are around. But the Dusters do exist as well, sort of the Nova Riders as well. These guys exist. The Ninetales are more or less supposed to be around the Stanton system. Dusters and Nova Riders are from Microtech and ArcCorp. I'm not sure if respectively, but that's more or less what the Stanton system's about. So we'll be seeing more Dusters stuff soon. In ship art, in the UK, the vehicle content team moved an as yet unannounced ship through the white box stage. It's currently in grey box with both interior and exterior progressing well. A new ground vehicle variant progressed through the grey box stage too. A new variant, probably for this STV perhaps. Although I kind of hope it's gonna be like one of those what do they call them again? The Atlas platform vehicles, like the Ballista. I still want one of those that have a bed in them. A science version of that. That'd be kind of cool. The team approached the end of their pass on vehicle tractor beams. The end of the pass. That's cool. So that hopefully means that it's going to be coming in time for 3.2 or 3.20. This included work on the Origin 315P, one of the first ships sold with a tractor beam in mind, the Drake Caterpillar and the Cutlass Black, the CO Nomad, and the Misk Hull C. The Hull C also has tractor beams on the vehicle itself. Interesting. I wonder how it's supposed to work, because is it going to be able to tractor beams onto itself or just off other things? So development of the Crusader Spirits continued. The C1 is almost grey box complete, while the A1 had its LOD0 review scheduled for early June. Alright, the MISC Freelancers component rework progressed through the final art stage with LODs mostly finished and some polished tasks outstanding. It's due to finish final art this month. Sweet. So that's the Freelancers component rework. So, we have this thing that they call Gold Standard, which is where they brush up the dashboard, make everything so that it's, what we kind of call here VR friendly, but at the same time, just make it so what you see is what you actually get, when it comes down to, the comms buttons and shields, the power and stuff like that. They haven't used the word or the term Gold Standard. However, they have mentioned a component rework. And in final art stage. So I do imagine this means within the back of the Freelancer, you have those cabinets and compartments that do say what they're for, but you can't actually open those up just yet to see the components. It seems like this is that pass for that. Because they're working actively on the Hull series and they use very similar parts and components, it makes sense that they're also working on that at the same time. Last month, the team began preparing the RSI Polaris for white box. Oh, okay. The giant Dorito is finally getting some more work done to it. And so because this is a sizable capital ship, we have been breaking the vehicle down and planning a resource pack so that an interior can be constructed out of reusable elements. They also spent time reviewing the concept to highlight any areas that would need additional design time due to the new gold standard requirements, and that's a message from the EU vehicle team. It's been a while since I've looked at the Polaris, but it's the first time that I've parsed it in my head as it being a capital ship, but there you go. That's kind of cool. So in the US, the Tumbril Storm approached the end of the LOD0 grey box stage, with the team applying materials, POMs, whatever those are, and decals to the exterior and interior of the Storm. This is currently in the polishing stage, with the devs tuning the visual balance. They also applied wear to the entire exterior and prepared to begin customization work with various paints. The vehicle's interior lighting is nearly complete, with an upcoming pass planned for the exterior. I don't think so, Melchior. Gray box on the APOA Santok Yai is mostly complete with only dashboard work remaining. And then the vehicle team from the USA, we have been generating a new set of textures to be used for labeling and the dashboard buttons, as well as creating a new damage map to show through the gaps in the armor, which will be unique to APOA. That's kind of cool. Are they going to go like more biotic again like they did with the Banu? You know, instead of like just bits of like mechanics underneath, maybe perhaps it's like gonna glow blue underneath and that kind of thing. We're also creating a new palm sheet. I still want to know what a palm is, which will also be unique to APOA. Cool stuff. All right, and then in community stuff. Obviously, if you've seen things like all the meetups and stuff, they're really cool. Beacon happened. A very successful community thing happened there as well. Bar citizens across the world happened too. Everybody T-posing for dominance. Dude, look at that guy's top hat over there, man. That is some dedication to the cause right there. All right, okay, so everybody's favorite engine, because I can always understand everything they say here. So part of the core engine team's work last month was supporting Alpha 319. A major element of this was enabling design to overwrite density lifetime manager settings based on spatial markup. Once design utilized this, the engine team will be able to add specific cleanup rules to different areas of the game. For example, some areas could be cleaned up more aggressively to prevent persistent items from negatively affecting gameplay. All right, that's cool. So they're working on just now we have, you know, this persistent entity streaming thing. They're just making sure that like things aren't tedious because they persist. You know, like when people try and park, you know, like Myre Furies inside elevators, or like, you know, leave mountains of bottles in places. It can be art, but also it can also just be jarring. And so they're just working on making it so that, like, you know, it will persist more where it matters. The team also progressed with their work on Starbuild, adding the remaining Linux support. Starbuild is now on feature parity with the old code build system and will be rolled out to other departments soon. I don't know what Starbuild is. I imagine it's some sort of feature they use to put together scenes and stuff for the devs. For the renderer, the team started removing legacy Gen 12 code. There is a lot to remove, but this will result in leaner and easier to maintain renderer code when complete. The core engine team also progressed with the generic shape system, adding editor support to save generic as well as remaining shapes. Multiple segments will be added before it's handed to designers to use. I have to say, this engine segment is a lot easier to follow this time around. They're actually explaining what they're doing. For Mem Replay 2.0, the team are currently adding more features, including file open dialog, faster loading, and asynchronous symbol resolving to get it ready for wider use. They're also adding optimizations and continuing to stabilize their feature team to integrate it back into the main development stream. Last month, the physics team focused on improving and bug fixing the new method for tracking unique geometry parts. They then improved cloth simulation for better simulation results, updated the rope and pulley systems, and added cantilever simulation support. Now, I don't know what a cantilever is, but maybe perhaps my dictionary does. My dictionary does. A long projecting beam or girder fixed at only one end used in bridge construction. All right, interesting. Now, we do know from the, the Carrack trailer, that being able to use pulleys, being able to use rappels and stuff like that are things that they want to have in the game. We've seen certain bits of armor, some of which have been kind of discontinued, you know, when it comes to their theta layers, like the, what is it called now? The Grey Cat Aural armor. Like when you have it all together, you know, there should be a pipe going from like the backpack down the arm into the glove, and at some point that pipe disappeared. It looks like it might have been a physics issue. It looked kind of janky when it did work, and so it looks like they're all working on that. Who knows what all this is going to work towards? A cantilever, bridge construction? Who knows, man? They do want construction in the game, so maybe perhaps it's just a nice feature to have, for the future of it. Alright, so last month, the physics team focused on improving a bug fixing the new method for tracking unique geometry parts. And I've already read that. So finally, physics supported vehicles on tech issues and investigated performance issues with Alpha 319 for the release team. Alright, and here we go. We have a nice, amazing picture here of Arita Commander in its Dying Star map here in its glory. Obviously, with this ISC last week, they actually showed us a whole lot more for ISC. This Thursday, we're going to be seeing part 2, which is going to be all about the on-foot stuff that they've done and the changes they've made to all that too. All right, so features, Arena Commander. So last month, the engineering team began a full refactor of how the game rule system serializes network variables and communicates with the server, which will make it compatible with server meshing and Arena Commander. Work also continued on a full refactor of the spawning module. So server meshing and Arena Commander. I mean, eventually they do want us to be able to go into AC from the PU through sim pods, so maybe perhaps that's all connected. Initial work was completed on a new game rule difficulty module. This was handed off to the Squadron 42 team for expansion, as it will initially be used to allow them to set varying parameters based on the selected difficulty mode. However, the features team is expecting to pick it up again after Alpha 3.20 for use in Arena Commander's PvE game modes. Alright. It's cool to always see them do more Squadron 42 stuff and have it like tied into stuff we have in the PU, just because, otherwise it's a waste, right? A refactor was also done on how loading screens are utilized. The team are currently experimenting with having separate game mode load screens that update to show the map once a response from the server confirms where the client is heading. This will fix a long-standing issue of load screens inaccurately showing the map players are about to enter. Okay, they've done a lot here, stuff that we haven't actually even seen them talk about last week in ISC either. A rework of team balancing and competitive scoring also began last month. This will enable groups of players to stay together more consistently, thank you. Balance teams based on leaderboard stats, thank you again, alright, because as a scrub it's not so fun being bodied all the time. And enable a new mechanic allowing players to volunteer to switch teams if an imbalance is detected during a match. I think volunteer being the active word here is really good, because that way, in Team Fortress and that kind of stuff, it happens that way. That way, if you're feeling charitable, you can do it. But there you go. For competitive scoring, the team are currently experimenting with various adjustments, including awarding higher scores based on the KDA and rankings of opponents, and awarding lower scores for the same player repeatedly. And that's going to be very important, especially if they do want AC to be competitive, because if you are the best of the best, right, and by being the best, now you have more points attributed to you, not just based on the ship you're flying, but because of you specifically. If you have somebody you want to help grind some points, it would suck if you could just basically sell that prestige by just allowing people to blow you up. So diminishing returns and also making it so that the more you get blown up, the less you are worth is really cool. I would like to see how that pans out. Finally, engineering began experimenting with increasing max server FPS in Arena Commander, decreasing the actor delay buffer, and increasing packet rate in an effort to reduce latency and desync in Star Marine. Alright. In May, Arena Commander's design team began converting the theaters of war. It's the first time we've seen this in quite some time, hey? Spawn screen to most other game modes. Okay. This will allow players to select their general spawn area, customize FPS loadouts from within matches, thumbs up, and select FPS and vehicle loadouts on the fly. Work also progressed on an upgrade to Vandal Swarm, with the team experimenting with new gameplay mechanics. The conversion of Security Post Korea was also completed, which will be added as a new map to all game modes except Classic Race. The team also polished the track layout for the 4th new edition of the New Horizons Speedway collection, Halloran Circuit, while putting the finishing touches to the first atmospheric arena, which is also within the Arena Commander map, because why not? The Arena Winner's Circle will also be available in all dogfighting game modes. Finally, the design and VFX teams completed a pass of all locations featured in Arena Commander to increase their overall visual quality. And there's SPK there with somebody in the Pirate Gladius, just to show it off a tiny bit. Alright. Any news that specifically works through server updates they're implementing? Lord knows we need it with current state of desync across the servers. Well, it's not being mentioned just here, so I don't really know. Okay, so features and characters and weapons. So last month, the features team worked on ammo repooling, which allows players to redistribute the ammunition stored in their suit and inventory to maximize the number of full magazines. Once complete, it'll make it less likely a player is left with a large number of magazines containing a few bullets each, as it will prioritize filling up the magazine in the weapon first. How would it do that? I mean, like right now you cannot empty a magazine and put the old bullets into, or I guess the remaining bullets into another mag. You know, as far as I recall, that was supposed to be an active process the player was supposed to do. It seems as if maybe perhaps they're going to automate it because, you know, immersion is nice, but also quality of life is nicer. The team also explored a new negative actor status triggered by radiation sickness, I guess. So radiation can be generated from a point emitter, which has a bigger impact on the character the closer they are to the source, or can be ambient within a room. Irradiated water was also explored, which affects an actor based on how submerged they are. When a character is affected by radiation, the protection of their outfit will start to decay. Once protection is gone, the actor will suffer radiation sickness and will need to seek medical aid to recover. The outfit will regenerate its protective layer over time, so the outfit itself will regenerate over time, which is kind of interesting. It seems like this way the outfits themselves won't necessarily degenerate to zero. This is really interesting, and I'd love to hear more. Obviously, within the Stanton system, we have some very interesting planets like, you know, like Ariel, like, of course, Aberdeen, which look very caustic. I'm not sure about radioactive. Then again, the Hurston company has been testing weapons on all these planets, so it would make sense that, you know, they would test all their nukes on a planet like Aberdeen, for instance. So, yeah. Obviously, there are other planets too, like there is one in the Nyx system, which is called a poison planet, right? And so I imagine that that would also have something to do with this. Radiation with, you know, from within places like that makes sense. From within rooms, that could be cool too. Obviously, you know, when I think rooms, I think things like within a ship, things like, for instance, the engineering bay within a Starfarer, which is kind of like the engineering room in the Starfarer is its own kind of a separate location. You don't have to be there. There's actually a viewing room outside of that, you know? Same with the Carrack as well. Maybe perhaps if the engine is on, maybe perhaps if the engine is damaged, then that room system will start to leak radiation, and that will be something the engineers then have to worry about as they're going about doing everything else within the ship. That's kind of cool. I look forward to seeing where this goes. That's actually really awesome that they're working on this right now. It's one of those active status systems that they've mentioned a while ago that I was wondering where the progress is with all that. So that's kind of cool. All right. So with features and gameplay, so Montreal's PU team focused on proof of concept investigations for the entity removal destruction trash bin feature. Trash bin feature. Okay, so this is again with PES and removing things that shouldn't necessarily be there. And the Montreal team are all about, I guess, well, they do a lot of things right now. They make the planets and they also go back to old landing zones and stuff, and they kind of like, you know, they doll them up. They use existing asset packs to make the places look better. Look at the new Lorville, for instance. Anyway, so the features test-driven development will be based on these investigation results and proof of concept findings, the latter of which was completed last month. So they're not really going much into this, just that they're working on some way to bin things that need to go away because they're just taking up space. You know, we've had people meme in the community that wouldn't it be awesome if there was some kind of like janitor system or something. You know, janitor is actually one of the AI archetypes that are supposed to be being worked on. They're one of the AI archetypes that were promised from within the old sprint goals or stretch goals even for the Kickstarter. We've had things like the barista, or barista, that's the one, the coffee guy. That was one of them. The tourist is another. We've seen the tourist now in the IAE and also within Invictus too. Janitor is one of them. Maybe perhaps they'll do it with NPCs. Maybe players will also be able to join in on the fun of cleaning up after other players for UEC. Anyway, the team also supported the Vehicle Died event, which is used by Soft Death and Vehicle Destruction and made quality of life bugs for Alpha 3.19.1 staging content and game dev. So plus, an issue with the RSI Constellation series Copilot Seat UI not connecting properly to IFCS was fixed in the content files. This was combined with a code fix aimed at the UI rules to prevent it from only tracking the pilot. These changes also create the potential for other ships to have their Copilot UI updated properly if needed. It's needed. You know, I would love to be the co-pilot and actually have a look and be able to see what's going on the ship. All right, so in missions, the mission features team continued to work on the ship escort, data heist, and consignment retrieval missions, and added the finishing touches to a new unlawful salvage mission where a ship must be stripped of an incriminating paint job before law enforcement arrives. That's kind of cool, honestly. You know, like the Ninetales are always flying their, you know, their pink and blue ships everywhere, you know, so it's like, hey, we need this thing stripped so nobody knows it was us. Sure, I guess. Consignment retrieval missions have been mentioned before. I believe they're coming in with Alpha 3.20. Consignment missions are, you have like a scavenger hunt list of things you need to get from maybe like a scrapyard or like an old battlefield, and you have to, like, you know, get a specific like a quantum drive, a specific engine, shield, that kind of thing as well. Data heist, that's new, I guess, to some degree. And ship escort, we've had ship escorts before from within the old, or I say the old, from the Ninetales Lockdown dynamic event. It looks like they're working on maybe perhaps making it more of a frequent feature from just non-dynamic events and that kind of thing. We've had this before as well. I haven't seen an escort mission outside of Ninetales Lockdown for years now, so it looks like they're working on bringing those back. All right. So another exciting development is that we're exploring a new lightweight PvP/PvE event set aboard a modified version of the Siege of Orison barge, in which players must figure out how to open shipping containers in order to steal the items within, all while Ninetales outlaws hold down the location for themselves. Scrap the PvE part, it's PvP. You know, it's PvPvE, it's not PvP/PvE, you know? Saying it's /PvE means that, like, there isn't a chance that someone's gonna shoot you in the back of the head. This is, you go in with a team and you shoot everybody else who's there. Now, what I hope they do with these, because of the way the PU works, and obviously this is just like a hope, I'm not a game developer, I don't know if it would work the way it should work in my head, but it'd be cool if you could sign up to a mission like this as the Ninetales, and also have to wear Ninetales armor to not be shot by the Ninetales in order to participate. That way you've chosen a team. Otherwise, it's confusing, and nothing is worse than partnering with people only to be shot in the back of the head in the 0th hour because, you know, obviously it's immersion and realistic, but as a game, especially one like Star Citizen that really does not respect your time, just sucks. Anyway, for Alpha 3.19.1, the team rebalanced cargo generation within ships across various mission types, including salvage, assassination, and bounty hunting. This involved removing unsellable commodities and ensuring the profit fits the risk involved. All right. Well, let's see what happens with all that, because I'm looking forward to cargo generation within ships. All right, anyway, mission features actively worked on refactoring old missions into the current modular library, including the missing person mission. Okay, this mission is one of the oldest in the game. I don't think it's actually had any noticeable changes since inception. So cool. Alongside this, they refactored how the destroy drugs missions work and made parts of them modular. For example, the previous version spawned hundreds of individual boxes, but with the help of new code, they can now simply spawn pallets that come with drug box loadouts. Alongside significantly improved performance and reliability, this method allows the team to control the number of pallets spawned for different mission difficulties. And that's cool because, as neat as it is conceptually to have to go to a place and destroy 300 boxes, because it has to spawn in 300 unique boxes and unique entities within the server, if the server FPS is slow, you might be having to wait 5 to 10 minutes just to have those boxes spawn in so you can blow them up. And if you cannot jump the gun, it can bug the entire mission out. So cool. A mission features ongoing work on bounty hunting V2 progressed well too. The designers are currently working with systemic services and tools to develop the systems required to have virtual NPC bounties traveling around the system. That is really cool. VNPCs are part of the whole Quanta system that Tony Z mentioned before, and having these actually active within the game is going to make it feel so much more alive than just going to point A because you know thingy is going to be there in point A. It also means that players who do prefer PvE will still be able to do cool things such as quantum interdiction for NPCs, you know, using things like the Mantis, against an NPC target, as opposed to doing it against players, which will also allow you to practice, especially if maybe perhaps on the server at the moment there aren't any bounties or active targets to hunt down that way, especially when you do, they just alt F4. Anyway, one of the engineers will with help from the Interactables team, is also developing a method for pods to attach to points in the world so that they can seamlessly enter and exit the game space. Wait, I missed a whole sentence there. The mission features ongoing work on bounty hunting v2. This has been on and off the roadmap for so long now. It's cool that it's being actually spoken about here. The designers are currently working with systemic services and tools to develop the systems required to have virtual NPCs traveling around the system. All right, cool. And they're also developing a method for pods to attach to points in the world so that they can seamlessly enter and exit the game space. Now, I don't know exactly what they mean by pods here. Escape pods, for instance? I'm not too sure. If you are bounty hunting people, maybe perhaps, when you blow up their ship, they're in a pod to then retrieve. I don't know. The word pod here could literally be anything. Bounty hunting v2 could literally be anything as well. We do not know what the limits and constraints are of bounty hunting v2. They've never spoken about it in length before. A lot of bounty hunting ships do have, pods and containers to keep your bounties, but, like a method for pods to attach to points in the world so they can seamlessly enter and exit the game space. This could literally mean being able to remove a bounty pod from, let's say, for instance, a Cutlass Blue, and then move it onto a delivery point for it to be taken away, for instance. I don't actually know if the Avenger Stalkers pods are removable. I've never looked at them that way. The ones on the Cutlass Blue look removable because it's Drake, but I hadn't thought about it this way before. Maybe perhaps they are. Maybe they'll have to refactor them. We'll have to go ahead and go in game and find out. Okay, so finally, the designers supported Invictus Launch Week, which involved fixing bugs and maintaining the Expo Hall transition system, the Javelin Tour, and Bengal Flyby. Okay, in graphics, VFX programming, and Planet Tech, the graphics feature team spent the month working on performance improvements and new features, including screen space shadows, improvements to quantum jump tunnels, and render-to-texture zone culling. Alright. A GPU memory allocator and an upgraded resource cache compiler were among the new performance boosting upgrades, while the evolving temporal super resolution, that sounds sci-fi, an automated upscaling system that can now upsample opaque objects, thank you for the explanation, officially passed its first milestone. Global illumination is well underway. So far, the first iterations of a hash map-based radiance cache, ray generation code, and a ray tracing prototype were completed. Improvements to Gen 12's validation error debugger were made to improve the accuracy of bug detection for faster issue assessment. In preparation for deferred render graph execution, Vulkar's frame synchronization was improved. Issues with gaps in pipeline resource sets at bind time were resolved with remapping update that uses continuous resource set layouts. So, a lot of techno jargon here, sadly, in this sentence, but in general, it just means that they're working on Gen 12. Gen 12 being this new renderer that has seen a lot of performance upgrades and stuff in the most recent patch when dynamic events aren't going on. Alright, so the Planet Tech team started finalizing quantum obstacle generation with generic shapes in asteroid fields. A collision issue detector and wear, dirt, and paint modifiers were also added to the Rastar tool. Alright. So, quantum obstacles are a thing that we've had before, albeit arbitrary. Like back in 2.x and in Beta 3.0, you'd quantum travel and all of a sudden you'd be interdicted and there'd be a massive rock in your way. It seems like maybe perhaps they're working on just making these things a little bit more less bad. Ongoing improvements to the biome builder will reduce constant spawn despawning, which in turn will relieve the physics team of large destruction queues. Water can now be simulated in-engine and features the new disturbance component improvements. Okay, so better water simulation. Eventually, I expect us to be able to see as we fly over water like a wake, happening behind you. Back when they first showed water ever, during CitizenCon 2017, I think Chris was like, yep, we need that. Finally, recent VFX features and bug fixes saw several direct improvements to both the editor and Cortec framework. For example, the new master VFX library can resave and export in the P4 format, and particles can now be found in a dedicated effects browser. Okay. Bugs related to damage maps, particle effect placement, and in-editor crashes were solved too. Cool. So just in general, the graphics and VFX team have been able to work on a bunch of systems to make future work and future bug detection better, and hopefully speed up development of the game and bug fixing and bug finding as a result of adding more things too. All right, so in-game branding. All right, so in-game branding, so obviously like, you know, billboards and that kind of thing, and that's the purview of the Montreal team. The in-game branding team, a whole team dedicated just to this, continued working on interior and exterior signage for Ruin Station and supported the EU locations team. All right, cool. Lighting. In May, the lighting team worked on Invictus launch week and continued to produce content for the Pyro system. This was mainly focused on Ruin Station's interior and exterior lighting modules for its interior. Live Tools. The Live Tools team continued to study the usability of the Network Operations Center and are now starting to collect the results. This will allow them to establish an action to highlight improvements, needs, and priorities for the future. The team also released a new version of the internal error handling pipeline, which features significant improvements over its predecessor. All right, we're almost there, guys. In locations. In May, the locations teams continued working on Pyro. Thank you. Making good progress on Ruin Station, which is the big, I guess, how would you say, the hero location within the Pyro. Pyro is about 4 times as big as the Stanton system, but unlike Stanton that has like 4 hero locations, I believe that the Pyro system only has 1, at least that we know of. They supported Invictus Launch Week 2 between major tasks. One of the artists worked on new racetracks, which was shown in a recent episode of ISC. The Sandbox team further developed planetary content for Pyro and continued to support the Montreal-based team on the new underground facilities. So it seems like since CitizenCon, they have been working a lot on these new GFs. The Organics team created new fauna, so new animals for the Pyro system, and are currently reworking They're currently reworking some, thank you brain, of the upcoming systems planets to bring them up to current expectations. We also have some very cool content that we are working on alongside all of this, and we'll share more info at a later date. And here's another image of said racetrack. And again, you know, it's fun for us, the player, but I can see this as being a test bed for them to use internally within, like, you know, offline for, you know, the thing they mentioned with AI and being able to train and teach the AI to, you know, stay on the road and eventually give us roads elsewhere outside of these, like, confinements. Okay. In narrative, over the course of May, the narrative team continued working on several of the mission initiatives started in previous months, including data heisting, package extraction, and consignment retrieval, which was mentioned before. They also worked with the various design teams to brainstorm new mission ideas. Narrative also kicked off further discussions on Pyro, specifically going over the areas of influence of the system's various factions, as well as defining which groups are allies and rivals. During a recent motion capture session, the team recorded the first air traffic control assistant for cargo and will be looking to review and refine the wider experience in future months. The team also began polishing and implementing a new tourist behavior that will debut in an upcoming patch. And tourists, we've mentioned before as being one of those AI archetypes within Star Citizen. Air traffic control was never one of those ones within the stretch goal promises. However, they have been very prevalent, especially in Squadron 42 animations. It, however, seems as if there's going to be an air traffic control assistant NPC on deck in your landing pads for the cargo system. You know, we're getting persistent hangars and stuff in the future. We'll see how that works. That's very extra, but also very CIG. But let's fix those baristas first, I think. Narrative also dedicated several of their weekly jams to exploring some of the verse's alien cultures and answering questions for some upcoming Xeno language development. And yo, I mean, like, Xeno language is something that CIG does not sleep on. There's a 2,000-page document all about learning the Banu language from the perspective of the Rust Society. You know, like, what is his name? Britton Watkins? He's extra, man. He's extra. And we'll see how that works. I would love to see more alien language stuff from within the game. I would love to see someone, you know, like Chris Harrow, somebody from the community who's spent so much time learning things like Banu and Xi'an, actually be able to go into game, see some ruins or an item that has language from one of these like aliens, and be able to be somebody who can read it. You know, imagine you, the player, going to like a ruin and finding like a Banu cube or like some plaque on a wall inside a cave that no other player has found before, and you screenshot it, and then you DM, you know, one of these guys. There's a whole subsection of the Spectrum forum where these guys hang out and they chat in Xi'an or whatever. You know, imagine going in there and saying, hey, any of you experts here want to be able to decipher this? I'll pay you credits, and then like you're on an adventure. You know, how cool would that be? You know, Elite Dangerous has done that before, so I don't see why it's so out of the, you know, question for Star Citizen. Then finally, on the dispatch front, the team released a portfolio outlining the history of Invictus Launch Week, a Whitley's guide on the Prospector mining ship, and wrapped up the month with another batch of Galactopedia entries. All right, and then online services, Montreal. In May, the online services team applied fixes to the character repair system, enabling players to fix some login and other issues without requiring CIG support. They also provided bug fixes and optimizations for ASOP terminals. The remainder of the month was spent optimizing persistent entity streaming to improve performance of its backend database. All right, it seems like the Montreal team does a lot, huh? In R&D, or research and development, in May, the team continued improving the temporal render code for atmospheric and volumetric clouds. Additionally, planetary terrain height map generation was optimized to eliminate frame rate hitches that were reported by players. Aside from using a more suitable partitioning scheme for the tessellation of terrain patches, I know some of these words, the changes also include terrain quad viewport culling before further tessellation by the GPU. The resulting height maps are later used to render large-scale planet terrain shadows and to spawn GPU particles on the ground. So more pretty stuff for less work, I guess, for your components, hopefully. All right, in systemic services and tools. This team spent the month working towards Bounty Hunting V2. This is like the second or third team now, which has been actively working on Bounty Hunting V2 stuff. Fingers crossed. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1 bounty hunting, please? Yes? That would mean, though, at the end of the year, or at least maybe Q3, including finalizing upstream work on the character creation service, R&D for bounty contract missions, a bounty marker prototype, so as opposed to being able to see people through walls, I wonder what that could be, an ISC on this, please, soon? And connecting the NPC tracker service to the game server. Additionally, a new C# service wrapper was completed. The team also continued working on Quantum Odin tool, including making progress on the data-driven economy, Quanta State, Quanta Life, and Battle Matrix and Battle System. Things I have no idea what they are, except for maybe what the word Quanta is in this context. So in general, they're just working on making the NPCs more believable and have essentially lives in a really weird, creepy way that will make the game interesting. Finally, the service team's group continued to support the recent live release, including several bug fixes and ship price modifications. All right, in UI, everybody's favorite, in May, the UI team's artists and designers worked on the user interface for bounty hunting. More bounty hunting stuff. I'm seeing a bit of a correlation here. I don't know about you guys. As well as concepts for upcoming gameplay features, while the Arena Commander team upgraded the multiplayer game's front-end menus. The UI team continued improving their tools, including making performance fixes and improvements to the debugging of complex UI screens. They also continued to work on the new interior and mini-map feature. Okay. We've heard some news, or I guess some talk before, about this new minimap. If you've played games like Zelda Breath of the Wild, for instance. I think they mentioned like how it's supposed to be like a blue little hologram kind of thing from within the game. You can move around that way. This is initially for Squadron 42, but will eventually be added to the PU, making navigating caves and landing zones a much smoother experience. Now, it'd be really cool if this was tied to an item. So like you had a probe you chucked down into a cave, and now that probe was active, and now you have that cave's map on the layout. Obviously, just having the map at all times works too. And then lastly, in VFX, last month the VFX team revisited several old particle libraries to take advantage of newer attributes that didn't exist when they were originally created. For example, alpha erosion is a setting that erodes a particle's alpha channel, reducing overall transparency in the process and helping to optimize the game's visuals. This was used effectively in Lorville's recently updated chimney smoke effects. Alright, and then work also continued on several new derelicts and the modular kits for various pyro locations. Okay, so that's that for the monthly report for this month, the month of May. I guess last month in that case, since it's June now. But guys, thank you so much for following along with me on that ride there. I appreciate that. I think that this will likely go onto YouTube because we now have an editor who is better than me at that kind of stuff. But yeah, thank you very much, guys. It looks like bounty hunting might be closer than we think. All right. Anyway, do I sign off now because YouTube, or do we just fade to black? Thank you for watching. If you like this monthly report, please subscribe. You know, we do YouTube stuff now. Very professionally, might I add. Hit the subscribe button. If you're watching on Twitch and you're like, that's different, I don't care. Subscribe, give me money. Thank you. Bye.